Greetings, my name is Jaro Juusti. I'm a fool by my trade. In the past, fools were entertainers and advisors of the kings. The particular matters I'm about to address in this video are strongly related to nothing less grand than the future of mankind. The future of these problems to address in this video include such as inflation, depletion of natural resources, energy industry's ecological unsustainability, the growing acidity of the oceans, the climate change, and as a byproduct of this, the melting ice caps and glaciers, desertification, the rise of the oceans, and also craters in the Siberia, as well as general uncertainty of the future generations' overall welfare. To these problems, I'll present a concept of solution in this video. These are important subjects which touch every one of us directly or indirectly, as you all may be aware of. With the changes our nature is going through, the ecological system of our planet wasn't designed to sustain the rate of consumption required by the system we created. To give you an example of increase of consumption, in Finland from the year of 1900 to the year 2000, the increase of consumption of average person increased 19-fold. 19-fold increase in consumption in just 100 years. This increase of consumption explains something about our production capacity that became a reality through industrial revolution. We are able to produce massive amounts of goods and services which can be directed to a target audience with great efficiency. The thing is, however, that the ratio of consumption we generate today exceeds the sustainability ratio of our world. The amount of sustainable consumption our planet could handle is full in the first 6 months each year. So each year, half of the resources we use are used from the next year's ecologically sustainable amount. It is also important to understand that the increase of consumption comes along with the increase of population. Today, human race numbers approximately 7.5 million people, or 7.5 billion using American numeric system. The cumulative strain of the increase of the consumption aligned with the increase of population is too much for our planet to handle. From the perspective of the rules and theories that keep our monetary system in operating state, while we are able to trade with each other according to a certain set of rules, I dare say we are not negotiating with the manager on how we live on her estate, said manager being our planet. I assure you, I'm not against trade and I'm not against business. I don't think a tool that makes trading possible in wireless manner is a bad thing. On the very contrary, that information is precisely how we can fix the problems we face in the present-day world, while still maintaining a balance of competition between companies offering us goods and services. We simply need to be smarter about how we organize things. It is crucial to understand that our reward mechanisms give credit in our system to participants who produce goods or services which hold demand. Demand in this case is generated by us, the people, all living humans in our world. It is natural to have needs which we attend by purchasing goods and services produced in the society to satisfy our primary or secondary needs. Primary needs, if you are unfamiliar with the term, mean the most crucial and basic needs we have, such as food, water, housing, warmth, and so on. Secondary needs are a lot more diverse category, but which without we won't die, unlike at the case of primary needs. These different needs we have form the fundamental principle of trade in our world. There is value in demand for goods and services based upon how much demand and supply meet at the markets. But what is this value really? Is the value of a thing simply dependent on how much others desire the same thing? If someone promises me a symbol equivalent to a bowl of bread, is the value in the promise or in the symbol? Both? Is the value in my hunger for bread? Does the promise hold the value? If I want something and me wanting something generates demand, does that demand then possess an abstract concept of value because that demand is met with additional supply at the markets? How does the information that I used to be hungry for bread last week hold any value today? What numbers do we measure? What is the correlation of gross domestic product in relation to the projections of progress of climate change? Why is it that our demand for a world free of climate change is not correlating to the current state of affairs when our economical system is designed to attend to demand with high efficiency? Does society really have to have a lot of problems in order to have a job for everyone so that economic system is at comfort? What is the value of the comfort of an economic system if the price of it is the nausea of the masses? How does this principle support welfare of the people if the welfare of the people comes at the cost of welfare of the economic system? Should people not strive to understand from a young age how we measure what is valuable and what is not, if the bread people work for and the operation of society really is defined through these concepts of how people measure value? In our world, value exists in certainty of dependency relations, how we need each other. It is at the same time in our beliefs, our actions driven by our thoughts when a choice is voluntary, and at the same time this value exists in actions when we have no choice. Most often we have a choice, but the options are limited by availability of goods and services, and also by wealth. Rich individuals have more choices than poor individuals. Then again, there are circumstances which we do not seemingly have a choice about, no matter how rich or poor we might be, circumstances such as being mortal or climate change. This is relative, however. Technology offers solutions which makes something not possible yesterday being possible in the future. In this sense, choices we have are related to the knowledge how those choices can be realized. I don't claim to be all-knowing myself either, but there is a contradiction if we claim that refining efficiency in society through traditional methods would directly correlate to the well-being of the population, if we don't even have the answer to the question of what direction we are progressing at. What cause are we constantly trying to be so effective for? The ongoing downfall of our environment is a fact. It is also true that economic principles which direct the progress within the system support the increase of consumption in various ways. It is correct that humanity is going to great lengths to adapt to climate change, but looking at the numbers, considering consumption and the economic preferences which we follow, we are at contradiction with the traditional concepts how different economies of the nations are designed to grow and how our world is able to fulfill these goals of economical growth. When we look into the sum of the numbers considering climate change, according to the IPCC, which stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their climate model estimated that between the years of 1990s and 2100, the climate will warm up to 1.1 to 6.4 Celsius, most likely between 1.8 to 4.5 Celsius. When climate researchers study our climate and form climate models based upon the results of their research, the climate models include various types of development scenarios. Various types of scenarios from the mild increase of emissions to the great and quick increase of emissions. One of the emission scenario groups is called SRES, referencing to approximately 10 years ago published Intergovernmental Climate Panel, which addressed different emission scenarios. The report described 6 different emission scenarios, from which so-called B1, A1B, and A2 have been most widely used. In the A2 scenario, the emissions continue to grow throughout this century, describing a world where difference in income and development differences remain big, and the population of Earth continue to increase explosively. In the A1B scenario, the emissions reach the pinnacle at the end of 2050s and shift to descent. The A1B scenario describes a more unified world where the growth of population turns to halt, the economical growth is quick, and new and more advanced technology is applied in an efficient manner. In the B1 scenario, the emissions are restrained even more, and humanity is able to decrease the emissions below the values of 1990s at the end of the century. B1 scenario is the most desirable scenario. B1 scenario describes a world where the growth of population becomes halted and starts then to decline at the midway of the century. The differences in the income and development grow smaller, sustainable development flourishes, and the progress of ecologically friendly technology is quick. In the B1 scenario, carbon dioxide emissions moderate at the end of the century to the levels which are approximately twice the amount than pre-industrial period. Alternatively, the A1B scenario of the amounts of emissions are 3 times larger than pre-industrial period by the end of the century. In the A2 scenario, carbon dioxide emissions continue to grow in quick manner at the end of the century. What do these different greenhouse effect scenarios mean to the future of the climate? In the B1 scenario, the temperature in the 2100 is 1.8 Celsius higher than in the year 2000. Correspondingly, the A1B scenario of the increase of temperature is 2.8 Celsius higher than in the year 2000. In the A2 scenario, the increase of temperature is 3.6 Celsius higher than in the year 2000. Even if all the emissions could be retained at the level of year 2000, the increase of temperature would still be 0.6 Celsius at the year of 2100. An interesting point is to understand that the B1, A1B, and A2 scenarios, the estimated increase of temperature, will not actually differ from one another in the first 4 decades. This factor is generated from the fact that our climate responds to emissions with delay, and partly because the visible changes in our climate systems are slow to emerge. Hence, we need to adapt to climate change even if the world would progress towards lesser emission scenarios. Even in that unlikely scenario where the emissions development will follow the emission levels of the year 2000, we still will need to adapt to the climate change and changes to come. The world has grown approximately 1 Celsius warmer from the year of 1800, but the difference in the temperature is divided unevenly around the globe. Some regions, such as Antarctica and North Pole, have grown a lot warmer than 1 Celsius. According to the SRES climate scenario report, we are presently following the A2 emission scenario, which would mean 3.6 Celsius temperature increase by the year 2100. This would mean more expenses to our world than all the wars in the human history combined, according to Elon Musk. Considering climate change is the most difficult problem we face is not underrated. Our combined actions as a species drive climate change onward. We are at contradiction with economic principles we follow in relation to the limits of our world. It is important to understand that our trust in short-term and long-term development and economical growth in present time is bound to consumption. Consumption that can be viewed beneficial from the economical perspective in short-term development can be seen harmful in long-term development. Short-term economical growth should not exclude long-term development from self-sustainable point of view. This type of correlation can be seen as the flaw of the system. The development in this sense is bound to value and trust from the short-term and long-term perspective. Let's speak a moment of trust, shall we? If I trust my family and assuming my trust has value, why is it exactly that I cannot put a number on my trust towards my mother, my brothers, or my sister? I definitely trust them, that I can feel is true, but I cannot claim that there would be a specific numeric value for this emotion. Same is true towards my friends. I trust them as well, but once again, I cannot express that with a number. If this kind of care from one person towards another is considered humane, we can assume that we are not able to express our emotions of trust in numbers towards one another. In the same manner, it is difficult to express the emotion of anxiety, how we might feel towards climate change. We know it is a serious matter, but we are not able to express our worries in numerical manner either. These worries and emotions of anxiety, how our species feels, however, has not been vague reason enough for climate change to change the course of action, course of progress. The key how these types of changes of adaptation can be achieved lies in precise information and knowledge. Accuracy and the function of how systematic progress can be created is bound to our economical system, which specialize in numerical values. When we speak of economical systems, it is important to understand currency, how it operates as a mediator between supply and demand of goods and services produced in our world. In the case of currency, accurate relations of value of different currencies are possible to be defined at the markets based upon the market principles. The value of currency, as an example, is bound to the demand of that currency. The supply of currency is quite simple. Banks can release more currency into circulation based upon the fractional reserve banking rates. Fractional reserve banking was introduced by a Dutch banker named Johan Palmstorch in 1657. He lived in Sweden at the time. This banking system is based upon the principle of stretching trust to its maximum capacity, and while it does in quite effective manner multiply the ratio of interest gained from loans, at the same time, this system risks an economical crisis that stretches into all areas of the global world of modern era. This practice is one of the main reasons, combined with the fact that currency is debt, based upon trust that someone will pay that debt back, why the world has accumulated so much debt over the years, and why it is necessary to consume progressively more in order to keep the payback of the loans in schedule. Fractional reserve banking works in the following principle. When a central bank gives a loan to a commercial bank, the commercial bank has a limit on how much from that loan commercial bank has to keep in its reserves. Assuming that threshold for reserves was 10%, then from a loan of 100 euros to the commercial bank could lend 90 euros to a customer, leaving 10 euros in reserve and thus gain a share of interest according to the loan contract. We can assume that this loan of 19 euros returns to the bank at some point for the sake of safekeeping. The commercial bank can now lend 81 euros from the sum of 90 euros, thus stretching the trust in order to have new loan contracts, each contract including the share of interest according to the contract of the loan, thus leaving 9 euros from this sum of 90 euros in the reserves. This process can be repeated as long as the currency is returned to the bank at some point by the customer, and the percentage share of the threshold is not exceeded. This means that with this threshold of 10% for a reserve, commercial bank can multiply sum of 100 euros to 900 euros in a perfectly legal manner. It has become quite common practice at the larger bank that the larger the bank is, the smaller is the share required to hold in reserve for their loans, since the more dependent people are towards such a bank. It is a thing called bailing out, since many governments don't really have much jurisdiction over the customs through which banks operate. And thus they are left with bad choices to either saving a bank with taxpayer money or risk a large-scale disconnection of trust across the nation. For example, here in Europe, in the year 2011, the Central Bank of the European Union decreased the requirements for fractional reserve banking threshold from 2% to 1%. This means that a commercial bank in Europe can create a loan contracts from a sum of 1,000 euros to equivalent of 90,000 euros, while adding for each of these loans their share of interest according to the loan contracts. This, of course, is difficult, but the success of these operations define the bonuses for the boss of the bank. So the goal stretching is an important source of motivation, so to speak. The virtual feature of currency through internet has created a situation at a relatively fast pace that over 99% of the currency that exists in our world is virtual in present day. The reason I brought this fractional reserve banking up is because I want you to understand two things. Firstly, we are using this system practically everywhere in our planet. The system serves well to maximize interest from trade agreements, and as long as we speak of incorporeal services and products, it helps the monetary system in having access to production to these operations with limited capital. On the other hand, we have speak of corporeal products that can be manufactured and sold. This system taxes heavily our planet's limited resources, for the increase of consumption is a crucial condition for the economical growth. Secondly, this system is 350 years old. I have every reason to believe that Mr. Johan Palmsrud was a very smart man in his time. I'm not denying that. But he did not know how the world would change over 350 years. Like I said, this system strains heavily our planet and as such has its flaws. The reason why fractional reserve banking has a straining effect towards our planet is related to the principle named Pareto efficiency. The definition of Pareto efficiency is as following. One actor cannot be better off without another actor being worse off. In order to understand Pareto efficiency in a simple manner, let's assume we have a race of two sprinters. The sprinter in the first place cannot run faster without creating a situation where the sprinter in the second spot runs slower in relation to the increased speed of the first sprinter, and hence the distance between these two sprinters increases. This principle is the cornerstone that made competition to become so refined in the Western world, where capitalism is a visible society-driven force. The thought of refining competition creates the best outcome for the best of all. This is the original intent and meaning of capitalism. This ideology has its perks, but it's only the half of the answer. While missing something, this is the reason why our economic system has such one-sided view of what and how exactly are we refining efficiency for with such intensity. An important question that at the moment our system cannot answer is the way different actors compete in an inversely Pareto efficient relation towards each other. Simply put, this means that if we assume Pareto efficiency to be able to universally measure the relations of competitors, where one actor cannot be better off without someone else being worse off, then we must accept that the inversion of that principle is also true. Inverse Pareto efficiency thus states as the following: one actor cannot be worse off without someone else being better off. If we measure the Pareto efficiency simply from a single actor's perspective, any personal achievement for the actor that promotes results is to be considered Pareto efficient. But if we only examine the relations between two actors, all results that may occur either through Pareto efficient or inverse Pareto efficient manner of competition produce the same change in the observed relation between the two. Let me draw this very clearly. Let's assume we have two sprinters, and the sprinter in the first place runs a little bit faster than the sprinter in the second place. This means that the sprinter in the second place runs that much slower in relation to the first sprinter. Assuming the second sprinter slows down slightly, this slowing down of second sprinter can also be seen as the first sprinter running that much faster. The difference between these two scenarios can only be seen when we add a third sprinter. When the sprinter in the first place runs a little bit faster, the distance between the first and second sprinter grows in relation to the difference of speed. But the distance of the first sprinter and the relation to the third sprinter also grows in relation to the difference in speed. If instead the second sprinter slows down, the distance between the first sprinter and second sprinter increases according to the difference in speed, just as it did before. But here's how the situation is different. The distance between the first sprinter and third sprinter remains the same, as the relative speed is unchanged. The distance between the second sprinter and the third sprinter, however, increases according to relative difference in speed, depending on how much the second sprinter slowed down. Right now we face the same problem in our system. Everyone is measuring their position in relation to the others from their personal perspective, while claiming that this form of competition is Pareto efficient. When the truth is that everyone is competing in a great deal in an inversely Pareto efficient manner. This means that if society was described as a river, we are constantly building dams in order to increase the dependency relations between people in order to create profits. The phenomenon of inverse Pareto efficient competition is seen in the lifetime of products we manufacture. As an example, this is seen in the car industry. We don't manufacture cars which would work without maintenance every now and then, even when we could manufacture cars which would work decades without breaking parts. But it would be bad business, and thus there is no financial interest to make cars work with the theoretical maximum lifetime. I believe this will change when the self-driving cars are introduced to our system. That change will happen, for it is 10 times more cheaper, according to Elon Musk, to use self-driving car than owning a car of your own. And when this change takes place, I believe the lifetime of cars will also be extended. This same phenomenon of inverse Pareto efficient competition is also seen in the home electronics, such as washing machines, televisions, laundry machines, computers, light bulbs, and so forth. Almost without exception, it is always cheaper to buy new item to replace the broken one than repair the broken item, while the lifetime of these products is designed to work a certain amount of time before something becomes broken in the product and the replacement becomes necessary. It is crucial to understand that this type of global custom accelerates climate change drastically, because all these items need to be manufactured from the scratch. The items need to be shipped through heavy logistic change, moved into the stores from which the customer can purchase the item. The entire chain of manufacturing the item, including the logistic chain, up to the shop where the customer purchases the new product, needs to be repeated again and again when we don't promote fixing items in a cost-efficient manner. When we have 7.5 million people or 7.5 billion people using American numerical system in Earth, The cumulative share of consumption for each person participating in this system strains the limited natural resources of our planet while adding momentum to the climate change, including the share of carbon dioxide emissions from shipping vast amounts of resources. Remember that in Finland alone, the share of consumption for each person increased 19-fold between the years of 1900 to 2000. That is 1,900% increase in consumption. I will offer a concept of solution for this problem as well, how the progress of consumption can be organized in the manner where we can systematically decrease the unnecessary waste of resources. Effectively minimizing the share of inverse Pareto efficient competition in our world, while reducing strain we generate towards our climate in great deal. When we speak of climate change and the challenges it presents, we need to understand that everyone wishes climate change not to exist. How is it possible that the demand of the entire species is ignored in the system that has been designed to fulfill and attend to demand? The answer is simple. Climate change as a phenomenon taking place in our world is so complex and vast in the ways which makes it quite difficult for a lone individual to see the entire picture, and hence it becomes challenging to carry personal responsibility in everyday life. It is difficult in terms of personal responsibility to make the right choices in the everyday life to cut the carbon footprint. Honestly spoken, this is not a very efficient way to cure climate change if we only seek to cut the emissions and minimize the ecological strain. Personal responsibility is an important part of the solution. This I do not deny, but alone I feel that it is not efficient enough when inspecting the scientific evidence of directions of progress, how the world is changing. We need a system where instead of cutting emissions and minimizing our carbon footprint, we make it possible to attend to the source of the problem, which is that we are not able to utilize massive amount of demand to cure climate change in a profitable way. In the present day world, there is no way to cure climate change in the manner that these solutions would provide income, making the applied solutions an investment. The solutions we have applied reduce the strain we generate, but they do not generate much reversing change. Reversing change means that we build machinery to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We build coolants that reduce the excess heat we generate, for we produce a lot of heat in our world. And I strongly believe that that is one of the reasons, in addition to the greenhouse effect, why the world is growing warmer in such a pace. We can use carbon dioxide as a coolant substance and also use it in greenhouses to grow vegetation, which threat to go extinct, and thus effectively reduce the amounts of emissions by collecting carbon dioxide and making use of it. We can also find ways to stabilize the pH value of oceans through physical operations, and also to find ways to make the craters in Siberia and Canada harmless, collecting or burning the methane as an example, instead of letting it to escape to the atmosphere. We can prevent the ongoing extinction of species with manual or automated work, taking care of the nature and its multiple habitants. As such is our right and responsibility as the most intelligent species on the planet. There was a research I read about that from the sample of 1,103 animal and plant species, 18 to 35% will go to extinct by the year of 2050s with the ongoing progress of climate change. The wave of sixth extinction is no joke, and you should believe it when a fool tells you so. Ecosystem in our world is fragile, and each species lost generates new missing link between the dependency relations of different species. Is there a way to achieve this goal to reverse climate change, and is the strength of technology enough? I believe so. I'll give an example of the volume of change we are able to produce through technology. Here in Finland we have lots of forests. In the year of 1950s, forests employed 680,000 men to get wood from forests. The amount of wood collected with their tools in 1 year was 30 million cubic meters of wood. These tools these men used were traditional items, such as axes, saws, and such. Work was by large manual. In the year of 2006, Forests of Finland employed 2,250 people. The amount of wood collected was 50 million cubic meters of wood in 1 year. The amount of wood collected was 60% larger in comparison to the amount of 1950s, while the personnel required to collect this wood was 485 times smaller. Of course, there is working infrastructure behind these results, and there is upkeep cost and maintenance of the engines, machines, roads, and all that. But still, the percentual increase of efficiency in the workforce was 48,500%. Using these numbers, if we were to deploy 680,000 people with modern day engines and tools to cut wood, the relative workload of this number of people would be equivalent of stunning 331,740,000 people using tools available in 1950s. We speak of deployment of equal 4.4% of the total amount of population to cut wood, calculated from 7.5 million people. 680,000 people being equivalent to 4.4% of the entire population of terms of workforce. This is the strength of technology we have an access to, and that is the key to our salvation. The answer how to cure climate change is hidden into reward mechanisms. Individuals have hard time to make informed decisions how to minimize the effects of carbon footprint. And as I said, that making informed decisions is one part of the solution we need to apply. Reducing our strain is not enough to prevent the climate change. Our climate will grow warmer. This will happen to a degree because our world reacts to climate change in a slow pace from the perspective of humans' lifespan. Remember, it takes 40 years to see the effect in climate of present-day pollution. By creating a reward mechanism where curing climate change generates income based upon how much machinery provides restoration in different ecological sectors is the key. There are 3 important questions to be defined in order to make this type of system operational. First, how much each unit of change has value in relation to currency. Second, how many categories exist for each unit of change. And third, how much is the total amount of change required in one ecological sector in order to reverse that particular global problem back into stable form. Our world faces a number of problems we need to attend at the same time. The increasing temperature of our world is not the only difficulty we face. The increasing acidness of the oceans, the rising sea levels, the craters in Siberia and in Canada, which release huge amounts of methane to atmosphere, the storms and extreme weather phenomena, and the extinction of the species are all problems we need to attend to. I will give you some numbers about these problems at a later part of this video, so you will be informed of the challenges we face. But for now, let's focus on the solution how climate change can be reversed. In order to reverse the change that is taking place, we need a fixed point in the past where our climate was stable in relation to the present state of affairs. This fixed point is the year 1700. This fixed point taking place before Industrial Revolution. The year 1700 is close enough to have accurate information how things were in the past in terms of temperature of our climate, the pH value of the oceans, the composition of our atmosphere, and so forth. while at the same time it is far enough from the perspective that climate change did not take place during that time. The amount of population and the strain we generated during that time did not have such an impact to our planet. For these reasons, the year 1700 is the fixed point for the information of how much we need to generate change through machinery and physical operations in order to reverse climate change. We need 6 different ecological sectors, big 6, which we measure in order to define how much reversing we need to generate through machinery and other applied solutions for each of the major problem areas. The ecological sectors are following. 1 sector to clean atmosphere from pollution. 1 sector to stabilize pH values of the oceans. 1 sector to clean garbage and plastic from oceans. 1 sector to negate the heat we generate, which require mechanical coolants, which can also be used to generate ice. 1 sector for the restoration of natural wildlife living in land and oceans to prevent the 6th wave of extinction. And 1 sector to prevent desertification. Producing mechanical solutions and work to cure these ecological sectors would create money for participants attending to the markets based upon how much results would be produced through automated process and manual labor towards these ecological sectors. The atmosphere sector measures the composition of our atmosphere, the amount of carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases in our atmosphere in the present, which are respectively compared to the values of the atmosphere in the 1700. Reducing the values in the composition of atmosphere to normal levels generates income in this system, in this solution. The amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere has increased from pre-industrial amounts of 28 parts per million to 14 parts per million, measured in 2017. CO2 carbon dioxide concentration has increased more by than 45% since the start of Industrial Revolution. The temperature of our world increased approximately 0.42 Celsius between the years of 1995 to 2004 because of the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and also because of the heat we generate to our system. Why is the heat we generate a factor in rising temperature of our world? It comes down to first law of thermodynamics. The internal energy of an isolated system is constant. The first law of thermodynamics is an expression of the principle of conservation of energy. It states that energy can be transformed, changed from one form to another, but cannot be created nor destroyed. This law means that all the work we generate by using machinery with need of fuel generates also heat to our system because the form of energy from the fuel is changed to work, which additionally generates heat to our system. In other words, we generate a lot of heat in our planet through using fossil fuels. We release approximately 35 gigatons of carbon dioxide to atmosphere presently each year, and at the moment in rising quantities. From all of the carbon dioxide emissions human race has generated, 40% of all carbon dioxide has been absorbed to oceans. It is possible to collect carbon dioxide directly from air. There was a video I saw where this was done and explained. You can find this video from YouTube by typing "This machine captures CO2 from air and turns it into fuel." Presenter of this video explained that this machine can collect 80% of carbon dioxide from the air. It is also possible to capture the carbon dioxide directly from the power plants. I will come in a moment to what uses we have for carbon dioxide. Another method to collect carbon dioxide is directly from the roads. From the total amount of carbon dioxide produced by our species every year, transportation is responsible for 30% share. That is roughly 12.25 gigatons of carbon dioxide released every year. If we build ventilation systems to our roads, it would be possible to target this 13% market share of carbon dioxide directly from the source where it is generated. Here's a picture how ventilation roads would function. Think about it. Passive income generated based upon the amount of carbon dioxide collected simply by having ventilation systems installed to highways. Ventilation roads could increase the operational efficiency if the ventilation system could identify when a vehicle approaches the vents. Ventilation system would form a wave of suction based upon the speed of the vehicle in order to collect as much pure concentrated carbon dioxide as possible. It is also possible to build houses and other buildings to filter carbon dioxide directly from the air by having filter mechanisms constructed directly to the wall elements and roof elements of houses. This being particularly useful in big cities where the CO2 concentration is higher. This type of solution would hence create income based upon how much houses and other buildings and roads and filter systems are able to filter air. The sector for oceans measure the pH value of the oceans and aim to restore the pH value of oceans artificially. The natural restoration of oceans' pH value would take thousands of years and would put many of the marine species to extinction during that time period. Between 1751 and 1996, surface ocean pH estimated to have decreased approximately from 8.25 to 8.14, amounting the total decrease of minus 0.11. The growing acidness of the oceans are expected to increase down to 7.949, minus 0.23 by the year of 2050s, and down to 7.824, minus 0.355 by the year of 2100. The present fossil fuel acidification is much faster than natural changes, and so the acid spike will be more intense than Earth has seen in at least 800,000 years. Growing acidness of the oceans puts several marine life forms in risk. Carbon dioxide eats away available calcium carbonate from corals and seashells, making them more fragile. This is a severe risk for several coral reefs, which have naturally high biodiversity ratios. The growing acidification is also dangerous for various types of plankton. Plankton in the oceans is responsible for producing 50% of oxygen generated in our atmosphere. So planktons are quite important, I must say. By collecting carbon dioxide and researching ways how it can be made use of and how to return it back to the natural carbon cycle in harmless manner, will benefit the well-being of the oceans in a great deal. While collecting carbon dioxide is a great form of business in the system where such operations generate income, the synergy is quite powerful when carbon dioxide collected can be used in coolants to cool off the planet and the oceans. Coolants can be used to make ice elements, to restore glaciers. Carbon dioxide can also be used in growing vegetation that threats going to extinction, or even to grow food for population in greenhouses to increase the yield of crops. Carbon dioxide can also be used to make fuel This idea is represented in the YouTube video named Algae Power, which is pretty cool. I strongly recommend to check it out. The income can hence be generated from both sources, removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and using it for coolants, making fuel out of it, or even to grow vegetation with threats to go extinct. If there is too much surplus carbon dioxide and it is not cost efficient to storage all that millions tons of carbon dioxide in containers, it can also be safely stored underground, containing basalt, where the carbon dioxide will turn to stone. A real process. You can look it up in YouTube with the keywords turning carbon dioxide into stone. Considering the uses of carbon dioxide as a coolant substance, mechanical coolants produced could be used to cool off the Earth's atmosphere, while selling the excess heat generated in the process from these operations to houses and other buildings. It could also be possible to install the coolant systems directly to the roofs of the houses and make them functional by using solar panels. In sunny areas of our planet, this type of solution would provide constant source of cooling, while the heat generated could be put to use in the heating system of the houses. It is important to ensure the insulators at the houses are well made in order to decrease the amount of heat leaking from the warmer space to colder areas. We can also attend the melting of Antarctic and North Pole by producing mechanical coolants to generate ice and ship the ice to North Pole and Antarctic. One way to achieve this is to freeze the water into cubic form with attachment structures inside the ice cubes in order to make the installations to natural ice possible. I have been thinking ships which could connect the ice elements to the Antarctic in underwater by having a mechanical arm that reaches underwater and bolts the ice elements to the side of the Antarctic and to each other in the way that the ice elements can also be severed and replaced with new ice cubes when the ice cube element has been melted. The process of building Antarctic would become an operation where these ice elements are built in blocks side by side. Considering Antarctic and its importance as reserve cooling storage to our world, preventing Antarctic from melting is probably one of the biggest challenges we face. If the ice cubes with attachment structures inside would be used then to prevent Antarctic from melting, these ice cubes could be installed as a thin insulator layer around the Antarctic. When the protective layer of one cube becomes used, in other words, when the ice cube would have been melted because of the increasing temperature of the oceans, the empty support structure could be exchanged to new ice cube with quite effortless ease. The ships with underwater mechanical arm could sever the ice elements from the side of the Antarctic to replenish. Cargo ships would keep the stock of available ice cubes with necessary structure attachments inside them, and the smaller ships with underwater installation arm would be in charge of bolting the ice cubes around the Antarctic. With this type of insulator layer made up of ice, the melting of Antarctic could be slowed and eventually put on hold until the carbon dioxide levels have been normalized through mechanical air filters. Oceans have warmed up to 3,000 meters because of climate change. Taking this into account, the ice cubes should be installed in the manner where surface of the oceans has more need for replacements of ice cubes than the installed ice cubes on the lower parts of the ocean, because of the surface of the ocean being warmer. Another option available to prevent the rise of the oceans is to produce ocean coolants. The more oceans could be artificially cooled down at strategic locations, the less the increase of temperature of oceans would have an effect to Antarctica. In time, this type of strategy would have an effect how quickly the rise of the sea level takes place, and eventually how the rise of the sea level can be brought to halt. Like I said, oceans have warmed up to 3,000 meters because of global warming. One estimation suggests that global sea level rise of just 3 feet, 90 centimeters, will cost $28 trillion to world economies. Ocean coolants should be prioritized next to Antarctica and also to the ocean currents, which are cool. The reason to position ocean coolants to cool ocean currents is because when oceans grow warmer, the ocean currents can become disrupted. To prevent this disruption of ocean currents, positioning these ocean coolants to cool seawater to cool the seawater currents can help the ocean current system to function as they have for millions of years. Considering the details of ocean coolants, they could be made from materials which can storage a lot of coldness. When the coolants have released the coldness storage to them, they would be replaced with the new coolants and the used coolants would be recharged on the ships designed for this task. These ships would have batteries which could be replaced and recharged on the land. To maximize the operational efficiency of the ships responsible for cooling the oceans, smaller cargo ships would be responsible to keep the full coolant batteries stocked for the coolant ships. When we are discussing about the rise of the oceans, there's also something what we could do about that problem as well. We can build dams which will produce electricity, as we already have, but we could use this energy to first filter the salt from the seawater, then freeze the water into these ice element cubes with the structure parts inside them, and sell the heat generated from the process to the heating systems of houses and other buildings if necessary. There is also 3.5% of sodium in seawater. This could also be collected and used in batteries to make use of byproducts of generated in the process. Salt in seawater has a slight effect on the temperature when water would freeze. Seawater freezes at -2 Celsius, when sweet water freezes at 0 Celsius. If it is cost efficient to collect the salt from seawater, it could be done, but it is also possible to just freeze seawater without collecting the sodium or salt from it. -2 Celsius isn't that much colder than 0 Celsius. The cubic ice elements could then be used as building blocks to restore Antarctica. The income would hence be generated from reducing the rise of the oceans, producing ice for Antarctica, and from the heat sold for housing systems, if there is any leftovers. If there is any leftover electricity from the process, that would also be sold. This type of solution would generate a passive counter method against the rise of the oceans. The more oceans would rise, the more seawater would go through these dams, which the seawater could be turned into ice, which could be shipped back to Antarctica. There are approximately 129 coastal cities, over a million citizens global-wide. That's hundreds of millions of people living in coastal areas. The rise of the oceans threatens to move all these people from their homes at the end of the century. With preventing Antarctica from melting and keeping oceans from growing warmer, it would save billions of euros or trillions of euros using American numeric system that would be required to build new homes, infrastructure and other expenses for the people forced to move away from coastal areas. As a side note, the European numeric system is using long scale, American numeric system is using short scale. So that is the reason why I speak of billions and trillions of euros. But the number itself contains 1 and 12 zeros. The rise of the oceans is expensive problem. I think that it is a possibility that ice engineering and underwater ice engineering will become, in the future, a major form of industry in restoring Antarctic. This is not impossible when restoring Antarctic would generate income, and it would help to solve the problem with the rise of the oceans as well, being one part of many solutions applied. It is also possible to build floating pump systems which would be powered by wind power and solar to spray water to the Arctic ice at northern hemisphere in order to prevent the loss of sea ice at North Pole. The water sprayed on the ice at the northern hemisphere would help to increase the thickness of the ice. This idea was presented in one of the science magazines I happened to come across by some time ago. Passive income generated by automated pump and spray system to prevent ice from melting could be one of the solutions required to keep northern hemisphere from melting. Considering the use of energy required by the coolant systems, one might argue that if we are using fossil fuels to cool oceans and producing ice to Antarctic, we would be only changing one problem to another, because fossil fuels affect the greenhouse effect. There are a couple of points I feel necessary to raise about this type of argument. Firstly, when we apply automated filters to clean atmosphere from pollution, we apply machinery which is several times more effective than the pollution generated from cooling oceans and producing ice to Antarctic. Remember, the example given how much efficiency of work increases with technological solutions, the 48,500% increase of efficiency of work in cutting woods. I do understand that numbers are different when speaking in terms of cleaning pollution from atmosphere or cooling seawater or generating ice, but the general principle applies all the same. Machinery and technology makes the mechanical solutions applied a lot more potent and efficient than the pollution generated to make the machinery operational. Second point I raise is that the world will move towards sustainable energy, such as solar, wind, geothermal and hydro, as time goes on, so the dependency relations to fossil fuels will decrease in time. This is the reason why I feel that even when we would use fossil fuels to power up these technological solutions, it applies only for the beginning of this operation of fixing climate change, possibly a decade or two, when in relation fixing climate change will take a lot longer. My careful estimation is that curing climate change will take 100 years with technological solutions applied. Back to the subject. Oceans have risen approximately 19 centimeters from the beginning of the year 1900. There are estimations that oceans will rise between 28 to 98 centimeters by the year of 2100. The factors which have affected to the rise of the oceans is based mainly on two different factors. First, the increase of water which has been born from melting of Antarctic and North Pole. And secondly, the expansion of water caused by the increase of temperature generated by the greenhouse effect. Restoring vegetation is also an important task we need to attend to. Global warming changes the territories of several species and may disrupt the balance of how species and animals and vegetation form the balance of biodiversity. The balance of biodiversity could be attended by humans to help the adaptation process, how different species coexist in nature, and this in turn would minimize the effects of the wave of sixth extinction, which is an ongoing process in our time. During the past 450 million years, there has been 5 mass extinctions. We are now facing the 6th wave of extinction. Helping several species to adapt to the environmental changes can be attended by combining territorial data where different species exist now, while taking into account how climate change will affect to these territories. It is necessary to plan into the future how different species will coexist in tomorrow, because our environment has not grown accustomed to adapt to so fast-paced change taking place. We can support this process of shifting biodiversity by using fly drones as an example. Fly drones can carry seeds which they plant to the territory of each kind of vegetation. This would be cost efficient in logistical sense and would also be automated process how various species could be helped to adapt to global warming in rural areas and sections which would otherwise be hard to get to. Creating programs which would give fly drones instructions where and with what density this planting will take place would be in great help to help our environment to persevere the necessary level of biodiversity and possibly bring the wave of sixth extinction to halt. Other tasks what fly drones could do is also to plant various types of beneficial insects to different areas in need of the presence of these insects. Growing insects in large quantities is quite cheap, while they provide important source of nutrition to smaller animals, which in turn will provide sustenance to larger species. Bees, as an example, are quite important pollinators. And there has been news from several sources that bees are going extinct in several regions, which can be averted when fly drones could move bees or entire beehives to several locations where this disappearance of bees is taking place. The logistic expenses would be minimal, while the fly radius of the fly drones could cover up enormous areas of land. Using fly drones in these two manners would quite effectively support the entire ecosystem on land to adapt to global warming, while providing support also to bigger species. When a species that uses insects as a form of nutrition is hunted by some other species that eats small mammals, as an example, has an access to nutrition, something bigger which make uses that species as a form of nutrition also has secured future for food. Supporting vegetation and insects hence provide support to everything else in the food pyramid, from the lowest bottom to the very top of the food chain, including humans. The way how fly drones could be organized in a systematical operational efficiency is to manufacture the recharge stations to a specially designed truck and trailer. The truck with trailer will drive the roads to the locations where the seeds would be planted inside the operational radius of the fly drones. There might be 150 to 200 slots of fly drones in one vehicle, I reckon. The fly drones would do the planting and return back to the car to recharge, while the truck would drive to the next location to repeat the process. The truck would hence have battery installed to the back of the car and also to the trailer. If we assume that one fly drone would be able to make 250 plantings each day, and truck with the trailer would have 200 units of fly drones. That would make 50,000 plantings a day for each truck. In 1 year, only one truck could make 18,250,000 plantings. This would be a great way to prevent the threat of extinction of several species of vegetation, and also a great way to enhance the natural carbon sinks of forests. If there was a need for cargo of seeds which the fly drones would resupply, it might be possible even to achieve even greater amounts of planting by one truck in 1 year. When we assume that one fly drone would be able to carry 500 grams worth of insects, a truck with trailer would be able to move 100 kilos worth of insects when all drones are in operational state with 200 units. Considering the cost efficiency, trucks would require a cargo hold for insects, possibly inside small boxes the fly drones would carry to the areas they are assigned for. This way it would be possible for fly drones to resupply their cargo when they have finished first drop of the insects. Assuming each drone would make 50 drops of insects, each 500 grams in the weight, the amount of insects moved by one truck would be 5,000 kilos worth of insects into operational area of fly drones in 1 day. In 1 year, one truck could have supported our precious nature with 1,825,000 kilograms worth of insects. The desertification is also one of the problems we face. Deserts are growing because of deforestation and climate change, and cover 1/3 of the surface of the planet. There is one interesting video how to make deserts into fertile land. The name of the video is From Sand to Soil in 7 hours. The idea in this video is to mix sand with liquid nanoclay, as Mr. Ole Olsen calls it, and the mixture forms to a soil where a certain type of beneficial fungus can grow and bind the soil together, making the former desert into a soil where planting vegetation or crops can take place. A great synergy if the fly drones are used to make planting automated process. I strongly recommend to look up this video, From Sand to Soil in 7 hours by TED. The craters of Siberia and Canada, which are a quite challenging problem, can also be attended. There are estimations that in the permafrost of Siberia alone, there is 70 million tons of methane reserves. The melting of permafrost releases carbon dioxide and methane to the atmosphere. For the organic matter which was trapped in ice starts to decompose in warmer temperatures. And thus the melting of permafrost works as a feedback mechanism which enhances the pace how global warming progresses. Luckily, there are a couple of solutions which can be applied to this problem as well. There are organic solutions and mechanical solutions. There exists a form of bacteria which uses methane as a nutrition. So if we will drill holes to these craters which are being born and apply this bacteria to the craters through the drilled holes, and hence the amounts of methane which is stored in the permafrost could be effectively reduced and would provide a source of income. Second method is to burn the methane through pipes which would be installed through the drilling holes to the craters. Methane is approximately 36 times as potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but lasts only a decade or two in the atmosphere. while carbon dioxide lasts for 100 years. Burning methane would convert its short-lived strong effect to more mild, long-range effect of carbon dioxide. In this sense, using organic solutions in the form of bacteria, which uses methane as nutrition, would be most beneficial to our planet. Collecting this methane and using it as a fuel would also be approached, but the locations where craters are is slightly problematic, for there are no roads in the areas where these craters are located at. Collecting the methane from the craters of Siberia and Canada would also require pipe systems to be built, and this will take more time. Having an access to quick solutions would effectively reduce the amount how much methane gets to leak to the atmosphere from the craters before solutions are applied. This is the reason why I consider it to be more effective to reduce the effects of methane by burning it or applying organic solutions to the problem. Approximately 25% of man-made global warming we are experiencing today is caused by methane emissions. Other sources of methane leaks are generated from meat industry, oil industry, gas industry, and also from the melting of Antarctica, and also in the future from the craters of Siberia, if the melting isn't prevented. These are the major causes of methane leaks to our atmosphere. Considering methane produced by meat industry, there's 1.3 billion cows in the world, and they require 23% of land mass of the world. I think that it would not be impossible to produce grass for the cows, which eliminate the methane generated in the stomach of cows, the bacteria that uses methane as a food. And I want to add that this is just an idea, and one that I don't know for certainty can it work, but it might be possible that we could produce grass for cows to eat, which would neutralize the methane in their stomach, possibly using the bacteria that uses methane as a form of nutrition. Or if the food could capture the methane in the form of feces, what the cows produce. If it could be done, it would be a great help against the man-made global warming. We also need to attend the growing amount of garbage in our oceans. We need to clean our oceans from plastic. We generate 8 million tons of plastic garbage to our oceans every year, and it is a growing problem for various marine life forms. A young man named Boyan Slat made an invention how to collect the plastic from our oceans. The main function of his idea is to cover large areas of seawater with specially manufactured net, which collects the plastic to these nets. These nets float on the surface of the ocean, collecting both bigger and smaller amounts of plastic, while being quite harmless to marine life forms, which makes it an excellent idea to apply. The plastic can be then collected and recycled. You can find him from YouTube by typing Boyan Slat. He made a great innovation, how to attend to the trash which ends up to the bottom of the oceans. It is possible to build specially designed ships that collect garbage from the bottom of the oceans. I have a picture to show to explain the main functions. The ships would have a number of rotating platforms which move garbage from the bottom of the ship to the front of the ship. At the bottom of the ship, there is a long mechanical claw designed to grab garbage from the bottom of the oceans. Garbage is then dropped to the rotating platform at the bottom of the ship, which then moves the garbage to the front of the ship, from which the garbage is then moved with another grappling claw to the rear cargo located at the back of the ship. Another solution which could be applied is to manufacture ships which carry drones designed to clean oceans from garbage, in the same manner where the trucks would carry drones which plant vegetation and move insects. We could manufacture ships which deploy specially designed ocean cleaning drones to clean trash from the bottom of the oceans. One ship could potentially carry 200 drones designed for this task, based upon the size of the ship. These drones would have smaller storage capacity, which they would fill with garbage, and then drones would empty their cargo, the larger bags of nets which are hung from the bottom of the ship, which can be winched up and emptied to the cargo space of the ship. Cleaning oceans would hence become automated process, at least for the share of garbage lying at the bottom of the oceans. Ocean cleaning drones could recharge themselves at the mothership when it comes down to the technology that can we generate drones which are able to identify garbage lying at the bottom of the oceans. Computers these days, computer programs can already identify certain types of images from pictures, such as people, animals, traffic signs, and so forth. So the technology to achieve this type of solution already exists, where these ocean cleaning drones would be able to identify garbage lying at the bottom of the oceans instead of picking up rocks or seashells. Here's an image how the solution would look like, assuming that one drone had cargo capacity of 25 kilograms and the ship would be able to carry 200 units of ocean cleaning drones, but also assuming that one of the drones would be able to fulfill its cargo capacity at 5 times a day. One ship would be able to collect 25,000 kilograms worth of garbage in one day from the bottom of the oceans in 1 year. That would make 8,900,000 kilograms worth of garbage from the bottom of the oceans for one ship. This is a concept of solution how to cure inflation. We need a couple of pre-assumptions to understand how this type of mechanism would work. First presumption is to have an index of inefficient consumption for every individual in our planet. The index of inefficient consumption measures how much resources are bound in moving different goods which we support by purchasing them. In other words, it measures the amount of strain generated by the product towards our planet. The variables to take into account include such as the methods, how different goods are being moved from the country which produces the goods to the country where the goods are being sold. This means logistical expenses. The variables also include the lifetime of the product plus the recycling potential of a product. Are all factors taken into account in relation to the usable resources our planet has? When this type of system would be operational, whenever an individual purchases an item, that individual will have a measurable index for inefficient consumption, which increases for each purchase made. If a person buys products which are manufactured in their home country, the index of inefficient consumption is increased only for the share how much resources were spent to manufacture and move that purchased good from the manufacturer to the shop. Following this same logic, purchasing goods from the longer distance would increase the index of inefficient consumption more quickly. The second presumption is that every person has a consumption limit, how much consumption can take place before accumulating a small tax for inefficient consumption. This tax would be similar to electrical or water bills. Tax for consumption limit penance increases according to a percentual share of exceeding the original index of consumption limit. People can buy shares from this index of inefficient consumption, and the price of this index depends on how well resources are being used. If resources are wasted unnecessarily, the shares for the index of inefficient consumption are cheaper to buy. If resources are used effectively, the shares for index of inefficient consumption will be more expensive. Buying these shares decreases person's fulfilled consumption limit ratio. This will have twofold effect. First effect for buying the shares of inefficient consumption is that when a person buys shares from this index, the money used to do this is deleted from the system, except a 15% portion. If person uses 1 unit of currency to purchase from the index of inefficient consumption, 0.75 units are permanently deleted from the system, and a person gains a portion back to their consumption limit. Depending on the price of the index, the leftover 15% share from the inefficient consumption index is given to personnel or an organization whom the public sector invests into in order to provide new forms and more efficient manner of operations which seek to improve the value of Earth. In other words, this 15% share would be directed to solutions how climate change can be cured. The second effect for purchasing the shares of inefficient consumption is that the person permanently increases their personal multiplier of payment they receive from their jobs. Had a person been buying of the shares of inefficient consumption for 30 years in a very diligent manner, for example, they would have 80% more income in hour in comparison to a person who has not accumulated this multiplier. For example, if a product a person buys has been manufactured far away, that person's consumption limit fills up more in comparison to a situation where that person bought a similar product that was manufactured in their own country. Since more resources were necessary to move this item from faraway location to this person, if the item breaks easily, this person will most likely buy another similar one and pay yet again the share of consumption limit, filling up with the purchase. This practice will drive customers to seek most beneficially manufactured items in terms of quality, price, location, reparability, and lifetime. When the price for the share of inefficient consumption is high, it can mean that more people have used money to increase their personal income multiplier, or that the resources are being used effectively. Under such circumstances, people might consume a little bit more instead of buying shares from the index of inefficient consumption, which means that at such times, people may tend to spend their money a little more on goods and services until their personal consumption limit is becoming full again. If the shares of inefficient consumption are lower, people tend to spend their money in these shares in order to make their time permanently more valuable, thus removing money from the circulation, except the 15% share, which is invested for innovations, how to apply solutions to the global warming more efficiently. This setup generates a motor where people in different areas have an increasing access to jobs based upon the more cost-efficient manufacturers in their area or region, because people tend to take into account how much they use their consumption limit when buying a product. This setup supports local companies while greatly reducing the inverse Pareto optimal competition in terms of resources spent. Additionally, the more people participate in this system, the more lasting the products will become in different fields of production. This mechanism simply punishes the companies and people for inefficient use of resources, thus gently forcing, through stick and carrot, people to think how to manufacture products to operate at the theoretical maximum lifetime, plus how these products can be repaired in order to minimize the unnecessary logistics and reproduction of the same item all over again, which in turn will have a significant effect on the amount of garbage, depletion of natural resources, pollution levels and well-being of the oceans and the planet overall. The money people have will also reach longer when the inefficient consumption can be controlled in this manner. Using currency to buy consumption limit also comes partially back to the person through the increase of personal multiplier. When a person dies, the personal multiplier that person had accumulated will disappear with him in order to create a mechanism to remove currency from circulation much more smoothly than fractional reserve banking system, making it a fitting tool for scaling value for different needs and directions of innovations for each era. It is far easier to allow the money in circulation to reflect the process of change in society than making a list of different terms which the products must fulfill in order to be purchasable in ecologically friendly manner. At the same time, we can use the natural cycle of life and death to renew the equivalency and the amounts of money within a system, instead of alternative of constant accumulation of debt in amounts that is impossible to pay back. It is important to understand the benefits of this type of system designed to control inflation while also seeking ways how to release resources in terms of labor and natural resources for changes discussed at the earlier parts of this video. If the transition of this change becomes defined by market mechanisms, it would be a great help in terms of organizing the changes shown in this video to become reality. Considering the solutions offered the cure of climate change, it is relevant to understand that after the reward mechanisms would be complete, the competition to cure the planet from climate change by making the solutions profitable form of investment balance each other out. The more one type of solution would be produced, the more profitable other solutions become caused by the competition. As an example, if we assume that filtering air from pollutions would be the largest target of investment, the more air would be filtered to a clean atmosphere of our planet. Other ecological sectors become more profitable in relation to the atmosphere sector, which effectively means that it is impossible for markets to fail to attend all different ecological sectors. After all, the profit is generated based upon the amount of positive change generated, and all participants in the markets aim to maximize their share of profit. This balancing element of different solutions make it possible to cure the planet based upon free market principles, When the markets of one ecological sector becomes consummated, other ecological sectors become more profitable in relation to the consummated ecological sector, because the amount of restoration required is limited and becomes smaller in relation to the amount of investments made to attend that particular ecological sector. Considering the rights of my ideas represented in this video, if it is relevant, I allow a free distribution of my inventions in hopes that they will make the world a better place for everyone to live at. The innovations are ventilation roads, using dams to produce ice, support structures inside the ice, the use of fly drones to move insects, cooling roofs, ships designed to collect trash from the oceans, the ships using underwater ice block construction arms, and also the underwater cleaning drones. There will be more, as I will upload more videos of my ideas how climate change can be cured. I would also like to add that I can be called on different events to speak about climate change and also about the solutions which can be applied. I'm also a magician if you happen to need a performer to an event. You can contact me through email address. My email is jaro.juusti@gmail.com. I would enjoy conversations, so contact me through email if you are interested of my ideas. I will upload more videos in the future about innovations, how climate change can be attended in more detail. Subscribe and thank you for your time. Yours truly, Jaro Juusti, the Fool.